gotta laugh at the stupidity, 'cause I've made some real big mistakes, but you make the worst.
Timed art form because we're all on a timer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, in the big timer.
Yeah, exactly. yes.
Yeah, no, it's the same. You're always dealing against time and negotiating with yourself. It's not good, but let's move on. That's very hard. That's painful.
That's
But it happens. You have to do this.
It's the only art form that exists. Yes, I mean where that there's you actually have to get it done on a schedule.
Well, you can do
writing as deadlines.
Yeah.
People have deadlines.
But that's different.
Yeah, it's very
I mean,
different.
your deadline is not when the sun goes down because you're never.
you're
and
never
it's not
gonna
the
get there.
only day to do that
Have
one
that
scene because you
location.
have that location with all the hundreds of people that you got. I mean,
It's true.
It's different. I mean. And deadlines are good too because it creates.
Yes.
It's good. You want to create. I mean, where there aren't parameters in filmmaking, I think we all kind of create our own rules because you want to have those things.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lulu, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say about the faith thing. What I love about production is it is an act of faith.
Yeah.
You know, every day you show up on set, is it going to rain? Is it going to, what's going to happen? And then if you know what you want to say, like if the circumstances aren't what you expect, you have to change what you were expecting and you have to make the best out of that situation. And so many times, you know, when I look back in seeing the final film, I think, oh my gosh, like this worked out so much better than what I could have planned. Yeah. For example, I shot in China at my grandfather's grave. You know, my grandfather died when I left China, right after I left China. I was 6. I had never saw him again. And every time I went back, it was just to visit his grave. And we shot a scene in a cemetery and we couldn't get permission to shoot at anyone else's grave. So I said, let's shoot at my grandfather's grave. So we were there, you know, and we were tech scouting and the storm clouds are coming in. And I stepped away and I saw that, you know, people, my producers and this whole crew standing around my grandfather's grave, feel that electricity. Like, that's why I'm a filmmaker, you know? And is it fiction? Is it autobiographical? Like, it kind of blends, you know, and it's just magical.
How complicated was it to shoot in China?
It's funny because the film is about like cultural differences, and then there were cultural differences on set. You know, the way that people talk to each other, the hierarchy is different. You know, getting to set, people also didn't call me by my name. They just called me director. And you had to get used to that. It's very strange because then we shot in New York and I came back and they were like, what do you need, Lulu? What? Like, you know, and they're just like, director, what can we get the director? And I had to learn like a different language because sometimes my DP and I would be saying, we'd just be talking to each other and we'd say, I don't know, like, I love the shot, but that tree is not great. So like, should we move? And we're like, let's think about that. We turn around and we turn back around and somebody would be chopping down the tree. And we were like, what are you? They were like,
That's
oh,
right.
well, someone's heard you saying that.
That's right.
And you're like, but I didn't mean for, oh, okay, well, it's gone now, so let's get the shot. And I had to be careful from that point on of what to say.
It's happened to me in Morocco.
Yeah. And then you come back to the States and you're like, oh, can you pass me that thing? And they're like, oh, no, that's not, the union says I can't touch that. And you're like, all right, can you tell her to move over? Like, no, you can't talk to her. You got to talk to him to talk to her. And it's like,
Where did that happen to you?
No, I mean, having an idea and then suddenly, when I was shooting the Constant Garden, we were location scout and there was some camels. I said, well, it would be nice if we had some camels, and we just drove by. And then 2 months later, the producer called me for a meeting because they're bringing camels from Ethiopia.
Oh, that's right.
And the guy had a plane. Ethiopia. And they were and they were showing me. I mean, this is the camel. We have 8 or 9. It's enough. Or even 12. And we can bring 12. And say, no, please. It's just a comment.
No, please.
Just nice camels.
Oh, that's
No, that happens all the time. They ask for snow. I asked for snow. We were doing gangs in New York. I was asking for snow for the whole set. For one, I said just a dusting of the set. A dusting, okay? Whereas the producers came to me and said, Marty, this is Italy. They think you're the biggest thing, right? They're bringing Matterhorn. They're bringing a mountain. You ask for snow. How much do you need? When you go and point out where it should be. I mean, I did. I realized, oh, they're right, okay. But they wanted, oh, maestro. You know, so it was a whole thing.
but that's wonderful, right? That's a better problem to have, I think. You know?
How tough do you have to be a director? Do you have to be prepared to make enemies? Do you have to be prepared to have people not like you?
I mean, I used to joke and say, directing is you wake up, you have 42 fights, and you go to bed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But you also have to have an incredible amount of empathy with actors and really understand what they're doing and how they're putting themselves on the line. So, yeah, you have to be tough in certain regards with the studio, with sometimes with the crew as far as moving at the certain clip and all that. But you also have to have a great amount of empathy, I think. And so it's a mixture.
And communication. I think it's about clarity of so often, especially shooting in foreign countries, it can be. You were saying this before at some point about it can be a miscommunication too, and you're fighting, right? And you think you're being tough, but it's like that with all departments. With I haven't worked with a studio, but with producers, so often you're fighting, but it's really just about like, oh, you didn't understand what I was trying to do and what I was saying, and sometimes you go, well, it's because I say so, and you can do that, and you can be tough. But I find it works a lot better if you say, let me explain to you why this is important to me.
Yes,
and
one-on-one. Yeah, exactly. It takes the time.
The thing I always say to sometimes that's like, don't ever say to me, but you said.
Right.
I may have said that.
And I'm sure I did say it, but it's like, but now it's
now it's
raining.
changed.
Or now it's and I find a lot of what you want to create time to change your mind. You go in with this battle plan. You've got all this stuff. You like you're saying. You prep everything. You go in there, and then you want to have the freedom to do what's happening there. And sometimes it matches up with what you brought in, and sometimes it doesn't at all. And
do you storyboard?
I don't storyboard because I can't draw well enough, and I don't like having another barrier, like hiring somebody to draw for me. I can't.
You don't storyboard?
No, I do. When I was a kid, I did my first
love your
movies
little
drawing.
storyboard. I've seen it.
And then you shoot as your storyboard. It's just on the day you just.
Well, if the picture is, I kind of imagine it here, and if the script, it depends. The script has to be open enough. The scenes have to be open enough for us to improvise if we need. But there's certain editing patterns we were talking about that I know have to be done that way. And if the picture, and if the film is less days shooting, I want to make sure that goes now. That goes over here. Last Temptation of Christ, we had no time. And I said, okay, Jesus in the desert. He comes in from frame left. And they said, why frame left? I said, that's the way I imagine frame left. It's frame left, and we're going to move. It could be right. I said, but it's going to be frame left at this point because we have no time.
Change it, yeah.
And so then other times there's some miraculous things that happen by accident.
Like what?
I don't know, things. You talk about, I made a lot of films. So, An Irishman. Just the look. I knew it. The look of Bob and Pacino in their blue pajamas. And that changed everything. Even the entire crew. We just kind of, we were kind of hanging out a little bit. Everything was very intimate and very sweet.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but when you said that, I just remember De Niro in his pajamas in Casino and thinking how that felt.
No, this is different.
It's different. Okay.
Did you change your mind about anything on Joker?
All the time. I just think it was just listening to this and I'm going, making movies is jazz. It's not math. It's not, there's not a way to do it. You prep and you do it, but then you come in, like you said, and it might just change on the day. When you say change anything on Joker, when?
Reshoot?
We didn't do any reshooting. I don't like reshooting. I don't know why. It's never been a thing for me. We try and just get it all, Particularly on this movie, we didn't because Joaquin wasn't going to keep the weight off for that much longer. So there was no going back.
That's why,
That scene where he's dancing in the bathroom is scripted as an entirely different scene. And we went in to shoot that scene that day, and he's supposed to go, and he gets in. He had just done something cataclysmic in the movie. And then he goes into this little rundown bathroom in a rundown park, and he's going to wash his makeup off and hide the gun under a thing. And when me and Joaquin were on the set, and we're just like, this doesn't really feel like the Arthur we've been filming now for 4 or 5 weeks. It doesn't seem like Arthur. What, did he see this in a movie? Why does he care to get rid of evidence? Like, it's just not him. So we sat around for 45 minutes while, the crew's outside, just thinking about other possibilities. And I ended up playing him a piece of score from Hildur, who is our composer. She had been sending me this beautiful music, and I just started playing the score from off of my iPhone. And he started doing this dance, and we just was like, wait, that's the scene? Called in the operator, right, amazing. I called in the operator, didn't even tell the operator what we're doing. I just said start on his foot. and played it off the
I
phone,
love this,
and that was
yeah.
it. And he just did that.
When the thing comes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
it's
beautiful.
a transfer.
Do we
It's
improv
the
a lot?
transformation.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't really improvisation because we came to
You're
it.
creating,
but having
creating.
done a lot of comedies, we leave it loose for
Yeah, that's the
improvisation.
thing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot. I love
do,
it. Yeah, no, I love it. When you mentioned that jazz,
Jazz,
I
not
feel like a
math.
jazz director. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
so do
I
I.
have a plan when I go to the set, but then, I mean, whatever happens, every opportunity I have to make it different and change the script and change it. I try to.
I was doing a movie with Robert Downey Jr. once, and he turned to me and he goes, "It feels like we're on the set of a student film." And he meant
Yeah.
it as a compliment.
It's a compliment to the
Because it
amateur,
was just like we just
Yeah,
go with
that's-
it.
I
We're
love
going to go
it.
shoot
Yeah.
over there.
Very
You know,
loose,
you
very-
know,
yeah.
this very loose vibe. And for comedies, it's just what I learned works for comedies. But I definitely carried it over with Joker. And I think Joaquin, for a particular actor, I don't know that he would need that on every movie, but for this movie, that's what he needed. He needed it to feel like an exploration.
Did you improvise anything on Marriage Story?
No, in terms of dialogue. I mean, the dialogue is all scripted. The overlaps are scripted. Where people come in the middle of lines, we block it all very particularly. But for me, I find by creating these parameters, it actually gives what I think the actors would refer to as improvisation, because it's not new lines, but it's freedom. It's
freedom is the word, yeah.
it's freedom, and there's a scene where they have it was an 11-page scene between Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson's characters, and it starts slowly and it moves, and that was something we rehearsed extensively and blocked out extensively. But obviously with them, all of it was both where I wanted to move the camera, how I wanted to edit it, the editing patterns. When the close-ups, I knew I wanted certain movements on cuts. So I would say, turn left here when you say this line, lunge forward here. It was actually inspired by a Last Picture Show, the fight scene with Jeff Bridges. It's the argument with Jeff Bridges and Timothy Bottoms when and he
yes.
cuts within the line,
Yeah.
which I think is a touch of
Yeah.
evil too,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
glass goes on there. Yeah. But so all of this was planned, but what I knew within this, that these two actors were going to have to really go there, and they do. I mean, I watch that scene and I feel like I'm watching their movie at times, because it's so coming from them. And so in that way, it feels totally like improv in that way. I mean, something actually Mike Nichols said about acting. He was saying he thought about it when he used to do improvisation with Elaine May. He said, when you're improvising, you're never thinking about what would my character do here? Who am I? What's my backstory? He's like, you're just so thrilled to have come up with this idea right now that you just can't wait to say it, and it's coming out right now. And he said, and I've always tried to get actors to the place with dialogue where it has that same feeling of it's right there and it's just, it's just coming out.
No, you and Greta are a couple. How does she influence your work? How do you influence hers?
I mean, it's beyond advice.
Yeah.
It's like the roots are, she's in there from the very beginning. I mean, it's not things that we've discussed even about things we might want to write together or other projects. Like sometimes we'll end up like taking, Greta has lines in all my movies, that are actually hers, I mean, maybe things she said in life, but also things she wrote, that I say, can I use that? Because it's.
Because we're always writing.
Yeah, we're always sort of thinking
Yeah.
about things. And so, like somebody had asked me, what was it like showing Greta Marriage Story for the first time? I was like, I don't even think of what the first time. I mean, there was a first time, but it was, I felt like she knew kind of what she was going to see because of, we were so in it together all the time.
Similarly, I mean, Noah's my first reader, and then also when both with Lady Bird and with Little Women, I mean, there would be days where I would say, can you watch the dailies? Can you just, because I think I have the thing, can you look at this? Do you think I should, is this idea gonna work? Or, and then he'd look at it. I mean, it was, but.
And it always will, by the way.
But it's being with Noah and relationship with Noah. It's just it's all the time, and all the time of like we'll see something. I mean, the I think he talked about with you when we saw Silence, and there was the moment of the way you shot the scene where they're talking to the Monsignor.
Oh, yes.
And, yes, and the way, and he paused it, and he was like, it's great, it's wrong, but it's great. But it's
We got
actually
in
like
trouble,
the camera.
and I didn't know what to
the
do. So
camera was
eye
like-
line. It was the eye line. I wanted the
Yes.
eye line to each person. So Rodrigo looked at me and said, "Well, that means we're going to have to go because the two priests are here, and the bishop is there, or the cardinal, whatever." And
So you jumped the line on.
yeah, but
Well, you
I
go
wanted
from
over the
Monsignor
shoulder.
to Monsignor.
Oh,
I went from
It'd be
Monsignor
like
to Monsignor.
Lulu's left shoulder and my right shoulder to Stephen. It'd be like cutting between the
Right.
two.
And we were cutting it together. Thelma and I, she looked at me and says, "This is crazy." I said, "I don't know. Yeah, let's do it the other way." We looked at the other way. She says, "Terrible. Go back the other way." And we got back to the mistake, which really, a mistake. It was like,
And,
we were
and
forced
I
into
lifted
it.
that
but you
mistake.
used to,
Marriage Story.
In Marriage Story, I do this a few times because the movie is all about
Perspective.
It's so much about perspective and about who are we with. And so when they're talking in the very beginning of the movie to the mediator, I go. I do that exact thing, and I did it again in the courtroom. It was actually yesterday. I asked Marty, but
You asked him if it was intentional.
But I had a feeling it felt in the best way, like kind of something, a
tried.
mistake that worked.
It developed
because you
on
could have
set.
always cut through him. I mean, there would be always a way you
No,
didn't
I
have to.
had two cameras. I could have done the other. I
You
tried
could
it the
have
other way.
done
It wasn't
anything.
interesting.
No.
But on set is where it happened. When we looked at each other and said, "Okay, let's do this."
Yeah.
Who should you go to for objective advice? I think Spielberg looked at the film and
Oh,
gave
he
you some
did,
editing
yes,
notes.
he did.
What notes did he give you?
Oh, he gave me great notes. I met him over the course of a couple of years ago. He had the Post, and we were both talking, and I found him to be so generous and interesting and totally willing to talk to me. And I was going to go prep Little Women, and he shot Lincoln, and it took place the same year. I mean, it's
Right.
the same world. And he opened up every piece of research he had done. He had how he decided to light things, given that it was all candlelight, how had he decided to shoot interiors. He opened the camera he actually shot Jurassic Park with, but he had me smell celluloid because he said, "You have to shoot on film. It smells different." He's like, "You cannot shoot a story that takes place in 1861 digitally. You just can't. I won't let you do it." And so I actually did end up shooting on film, and when Tom Rothman asked me why, I said, "I'm sorry, Steven Spielberg had me smell a camera." But then, so I showed him the film, and he did what he did, which was so incredible, is that he talked to me for a long time, and what he did was he gave it back to me. He talked through the film from his memory and gave his notes as he remembered the movie. So it's almost like he did the reverse back to me, of giving me back the movie. And he gave me, I ran different ideas by him, and he gave me, and then he'd give it back to me. He'd say, "Okay, so what you're saying is," and then he'd explain it again to me. And it's just, it feels like such an honor to be able to talk with someone who so thinks about how do we tell stories and how do we bring people into the stories. And it's just, it's not one thing, it's everything about how you talk through it and communicate it. And I think maybe it could, I don't know, I think maybe perhaps for all of you, I don't know if it was cinema or nothing. I don't know that it was cinema or nothing for me. It might have been theater or something else, but it's a wonderful thing.
Fernando, was it cinema or nothing for you?
No, I'm an architect. And before that, I tried to be a biologist. But when I was finishing school, I started making experimental videos, and video was just coming out, small eumatic videos, and started doing some experimental stuff for museums, this kind of thing. And then I moved on to television and then to film. I just surfed in whatever was happening.
I know you at one point thought of entering the seminary and becoming
Yes,
a
I
priest.
tried to, but I was asked to leave.
Really?
I left
Me too.
after 1 year preparatory. It was terrible. I was only 15 years old, and I realized when I got in there, this is a big commitment. And it's not about No, it's not about yourself. It's this idea of how you give to other people, what you can be to other people. I was too young. I didn't understand. There was this priest who was a mentor to me, and he was an extraordinary man. Just passed away a couple of years ago, and I wanted to be like him. But you can't try to make a vocation, a calling, because you want to be like somebody. You have to find your own. And there were working class people that, you know, we had no books in the house. There was not a reading culture, and we couldn't go to theater. It was too expensive. So it was always movies, and I had asthma, you know. And the streets were pretty tough. Either you make it in the street or, you know, the church wasn't bad, St. Patrick's Old Cathedral. And I found that they were talking about other things that, I heard it in the family. But I found that there was something else going on there about compassion and about what our lives are supposed to be about. And so I tried, but I found it was channeled ultimately into, I had no choice, basically. I was obsessed with the frame, perforation by perforation.
Do you see like making films, being an artist, as a spiritual practice in a way, or as a leadership in a way, an artistic leadership?
I've said that. I've said that, and then people, oh, it's so pretentious and stuff. But the point is that if you work that way, and you've got a gift, let's say, and you work, it's like a prayer. So when you go to work, it's praying. You know?
Yeah, I had that thought actually. I had like a little moment of revelation when I watched Two Popes, because first of all, there's a quote in there that says, "Truth is vital, but without love, it is unbearable."
This is Pope Benedict.
Yes, it is, but I heard it
Yeah,
because I didn't know that much about his story until I saw the film. And then, you know, his whole philosophy of like spiritual guidance, how do you do it from within a palace? You know, how do you do it if you are up there separated from the people, right? And he is part of the people. He says the carnival is over. So he doesn't want to wear the costume. He doesn't, and it really made me think, because I'm very new to all this, you know. And this year I've been like in cars and hotels and like, you know, a team of people suddenly around me, and it's like literally 6 months ago I was like I was just like talk to people. If someone wanted to talk to me, I would just talk to them. And suddenly it's like this kind of separation. I've been dealing with it, and when I watched your movie, I had this moment of revelation of like, this is why this year has actually been such a struggle, because how do I keep creating if I'm separated? And how do I, you know, we're trying to figure out where to live, and like we're gonna move and get a house. I'm like, I don't want to live in the hills. I don't want to live up there. You know, I want to live in a city. I want to walk out and be able to like talk to the baker. I don't know.
It's a test. It's a big test. It's a test to you know, you have to hold on to the creativity.
How do
and
you
say
hold
what's
on?
more important, what the value is in the creativity. You say, wait, you know, I was out here for 10 years, and you know, I found that you know, a friend got a car and I had a car, and then they got a nicer car, and then I, you know, and I said, and then I realized, no, I'm not interested in that. I went this way, making the films. But the point was that ultimately I can't see how you could sink into a situation where you think of the temporal issues, you think of a bigger house, you think of a field beyond to buy that house, and what are you going to do with it? You have to go back to the creativity and protect that. And the only thing I could advise is maybe under the circumstances now, you know, live with the special person kind of situation, but to facilitate you to continue to focus.
Does it help or hurt having a partner? I should say Lulu is with Barry Jenkins, who's an extraordinary director. Does that help or hurt you with the artistic side of your work?
It helps because I have the support. I don't think that anyone can possibly know what we do, and there are so many women doing this too, where I'm like, you know, I'm not home. I'm not going to be home for months, you know, and are you going to be okay with that? Like, not a gender thing, but I think few partners would be okay with that, you know.
I agree, yeah.
But I do think it's specifically with women, it's even harder. And so it helps to have somebody who's been through this, who knows. But we don't collaborate in the way that you guys do either. There is a lot more separation because, you know, we've been together maybe for less amount of time, but also I like having that separation. You know, I like having, but you guys have had a long working relationship, you know, as well as being like romantic partners. But I think for me it's nice to have the separation because yeah, we come from two different worlds, and it's also nice to like have him be really fresh eyes. And also we're just different people. Like, we approach things very differently. Like, this is too much information, but we recently got in a fight about where to live. And he was like, I've been looking at houses in the hills. I was like, you didn't ask me. And he was like, it's such a great surprise, right? And he was like so excited about it. And I was like, I don't want to live in the hills. I want to live with the people on the ground. I need to be in a city. And he's like, but then we won't have a view. And I was like,
True.
I don't want a of you. I want to, you know, but like those are the things, like it helps because we're making, like it's so difficult. Like it takes over your entire life, what we do. You don't get to just go home at the end of the night or on weekends, you know, and you don't get to stick to plans that you've made, you know, like so often you're like, I know you've been sitting in that restaurant for 3 hours, but I'm still in the sound mix and it's our final day.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, if you say that to some people, they'll be like, well, what, can't you just do it another day? Can't you just add another day? Well, what, like I've been sitting here. You know, but he gets that. He's like, oh, it's your last day. Like, this is a small budget film. There's no way they're gonna go for it. I'm good.
Order.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep drinking martinis with the bartender, you know? And that is a huge thing that you don't have to worry about when you're stressed out.
What moment professionally has tested you the most?
Probably this, what we've gone through on this picture, you know, with Joker was pretty rough, as crazy as that sounds again now, through the media, that the movie is, you know, made to inspire violence or to all the things that really weren't in there for me and Joaquin when we were making the film, for something to be misunderstood before anybody saw it. So to me that was a great test of just, all right, we'll just keep calm and let the movie speak for itself when people can finally see it. I mean, you know, when we premiered at Venice, we had a great screening in Venice. We won the Golden Lion. It was a huge deal. From that moment on, everything changed. Weirdly, you know, people come at it as a target and start talking about, again, why it's dangerous. And really, when we go, we made a movie about childhood trauma and the loss of compassion and lack of love in a person's life and what that might do. But everybody always wants to talk about the spark and not the powder. But the film's really about the powder, what makes that happen, you know? But it's a much easier and reductive way to just, you know, so that for me, I mean, I'm sure there are other things, but I'm just trying to tie it into something I went through recently. I wonder if for Marty it was Last Temptation.
Last Temptation,
I
definitely.
would assume.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Last Temptation, sight unseen, condemned by very conservative elements of Christian evangelicals, which I'm a Roman Catholic. It's a different thing. And even then, many the hierarchy of the church condemned it without seeing it. Although Pope John Paul II on a plane was asked, what does he think of it? He said, well, I haven't seen the film, but I listened to my College of Cardinals. But in any event...
And still condemned it, or what did
No,
he say?
well, it stayed condemned, but he didn't condemn it. But I don't know what he personally thought. I don't think he saw the film. But the point is that it was really an attempt to understand more about the issue of faith, really. Understand this concept of the incarnation, if one would like to get into that sort of thing. It is not the place for it, but the point is to really explore and have an intelligent conversation about it. It may not please everybody, I know that, but by the time we were, I don't even think we could have edited for another month or so, but we stopped in a way, and we had to release the film. Went all over the world, went to Venice, but we didn't get presented in Venice, but out of competition. And that was a firestorm. And in any event, I really, truly believed in it, and still do. It took me years later to find the other way, to go further, and that was silence, to go deeper into it. You know, so that what happens is that the iconography of Last Temptation is so you know, it sets off people right away. Better to go behind, somehow go around the iconography. But I wanted to tell the story that Kazantzakis wrote in the book. It's just an idea. It's not based on the Bible. It's not based on the New Testaments. So in any event, it was devastating. It was dangerous. But in a funny way, something happened about a week before it opened when I was watching all this stuff go on. I realized, Neil, the film isn't even important. It's not important. It's about what's happening now. And it saddened me, but it made me realize maybe art is important, but there's something beyond that, you know? And that's what I had to deal with in myself, really.
Same thing. Fernando, what's been your biggest test?
Well, I had some films that I worked for years and collapsed. But I think the hardest thing was I directed the opening of the Olympic ceremony in Rio in 2016 with two friends. And I had never directed live, not even a theater. So there was a really big challenge. I had to talk about my country to the whole world, like 3 billion viewers. That was so. During this process, I managed to direct an opera, a Bizet,
Bizet,
Fischer.
Really, that's great.
Yeah, so I could have something live to see how to play, and I think it worked. The budget was going down, from the beginning to the end, it was like 10 times less money. It was challenging. Challenging.
No.
Well, there were definitely creatively. I think there were scenes in Marriage Story. There was the where I felt usually the separation I can feel as a director from the emotional content of a scene. I felt that I actually had to stop, and I mean they had to stop, but I also had to stop and take walks around the block and like shake it off in a way that I haven't had before on a set, where I usually feel. At that point, you know, with all the planning thing, I can be moved by something an actor's doing. I am all the time, but it feels in the movie in a way. I'm responding. You know, this felt something like there was a lot of. I felt a real responsibility there.
Greta?
All of mine are petty. Like people telling me without me asking that they didn't like my movie.
What? That's the worst.
Yeah, just like
That's horrible.
It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
We don't need to know it.
But no. I mean, no. I think truly for me, you know, I so badly wanted to be part of making movies and making art, and when you feel like, oh, how am I ever going to get to that? How is that ever going to work out? That those are the moments.
That's mine too, really.
But
Well, when I was trying to make The Farewell, American producers said, this is not an American film. It's maybe a Chinese film. You should maybe go talk to Chinese investors. I went and talked to Chinese investors, and they said, Chinese people are not going to get it if your main character has this Western point of view, right? And then both sides were like, but we would be interested in making it if you changed these elements, if you made it funny, if you brought home a foreign American boyfriend who didn't know how to use chopsticks and everyone could laugh. You know, and to what Greta was saying earlier, it's almost like I feel like my whole life subconsciously I've gotten used to compromising. And it was not even a question, it's just you get used to it because you go, that's the only way to get something made. The question is just how far, and still keep my sanity and still keep some semblance of what I'm trying to say. And so I didn't make the film because I couldn't get it set up, but I ended up doing this particular story for This American Life. And that happened very quickly. It's a bunch of journalists, and they said, this story is so interesting, it's fact-based, so they asked a bunch of questions, and we did a bunch of interviews. And I narrated the whole story. I was in a studio in New York by myself at 10 p.m. with my producer and into a microphone with some whiskey. And then I went out for dinner after with my friend, and we were celebrating, but I started sobbing. I started crying because I said, it was like, what's going on? Your story's gonna be heard, within 48 hours by so many people, and you finally get to tell your story. And I said, I've never experienced that kind of purity of storytelling before. Uncompromised, where someone just said, what's your story? And tell me how that made you feel, and tell me what happened, as opposed to how do we change it to work for the marketplace. And now that I've experienced it, I've realized that for the last 10 years, I've been in the wrong industry. I've been so focused on the goal of just proving to my parents that I could do it and I can make a living doing it, that I don't fit in this industry, because they tell me that I have to find my voice. That's the way to become a great filmmaker. But the industry doesn't want my voice. And why am I doing this? It takes so much money, so much time, so much energy. And with This American Life reaches 4 million people in 2 weeks. And it's my voice literally into the microphone. Isn't that more powerful? Isn't that more...
So you go to abandon filmmaking?
Yeah.
Really?
I wanted to abandon filmmaking, and I asked Ira and them. They said that they were interested in potentially having me do an internship for 6 months. And I was gonna leave to go work for public radio, because I also got paid more on public radio than I ever did in film for 1 month of work. And 48 hours later, after the story aired, producers called and asked me to make the film. And it was because I had this realization that I was ready to leave, that when they called, I said, I'm not going to make it unless I can make it the same way that I made this story for This American Life. And I'm not even going to take the meeting unless they agree. I'm not changing the cast. I'm not changing the way I'm doing the language. I don't care what the budget is. I just need enough budget to make the film. to go to China to shoot there, to cast people. But yeah, and that was how I picked my partners, and that was the thing that drove me the entire project. Every decision that I fought for, it was going back to that feeling in the studio of being an uncompromised storyteller. And every time it got really difficult, going back to one of the things that Barry really helped me with, he would say that a great film is made in the last 10%. And so every time you feel that you're stuck, just think another 10%. And so it became like a joke, because every time I'd be like, just 2 more frames, and they were like, is this your 10%? You know, my editor would say that, everyone would say that, but and now I truly believe that it was because I pushed that just like millimeter, centimeter, and that's how you make a film.
Good. I want to thank you all. What a great story to end on. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lulu Wong.
My name is Fernando Morales.
I'm Greta Gerwig.
I am Noah Baumbach.
Thank you for watching the Hollywood Reporter.
The Hollywood Reporter Roundtables.
Roundtables on YouTube.
On YouTube.